Minister, my last question for you, the last matter that we want to raise, is concerning crime in the Caribbean, in Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica and Guyana in particular, but in particular the murder rate. According to most recent statistics, within the top 10 countries with the highest murder rates, Jamaica is third in the world, and Trinidad and Tobago is seventh in the world. And when we say Trinidad and Tobago is seventh, most of those murders take place around Port of Spain and the communities of some of the councillors that you met with this morning. But in addition to just Jamaica and Trinidad being in the top 10 in the world, most of the other countries with the highest murder rates are nearby. Most are in Central and South America, such as Honduras, which is number one. You also have places like Guatemala, Brazil, El Salvador, etc., all within near proximity. How can you see us as a region, because most of the rest of the Caribbean isn't really like this, but just Trinidad and Jamaica and the Central American and South American cities where there's a lot of industrialization, a lot of infrastructural development, where a lot of tall buildings are going up. There are these ghetto communities on the outskirts where the labor comes from, and those ghetto communities tend to be the areas where there's such a skyrocketing murder rate. In spite of the reality of industrialization and infrastructural development in these Caribbean societies and Central American societies, how do you see us being able to resist the murder rate while still engaging in industrial development?
There's a culture that is not Trinidadian in origin or Jamaican in origin that's coming out of America. Last year in Chicago alone, I think there were over 300 murders for a city. In America, the murder rate is such that the last time I saw some figures, 20,000 murders a year, but over 10,000 of those murders are black on black. Even in the tiny island of St. Kitts, the murder rate is growing. And for a country with 50,000 people to have 20 or 30 murders in a year is phenomenal when such did not exist in the past. What is this? What is happening? How much time do I have?
We're going up to 10 o'clock. But
Well, I don't want to go all the way to 10, but if you will allow me these next few minutes. In the 60s, when you had the rise of consciousness in Black America, I want you to follow this and just think about it. Have you seen the movie The American Gangster?
yes, sir.
Was it Denzel Washington? Yes. In the 60s, which was the time of what we call black consciousness, that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm X, and others started popularizing the term black, where black was something that black people did not want to be called. You could call me a SOB, you could call me a B, you could call me anything, just don't prefix it with the word black, because then I will fight you because I am not black. But in the 60s, black became a badge of honor. So when James Brown came up with the song, I'm Black and I'm Proud, and all of these, the last poets and all of the poets, Nikki Giovanni and Sonia Sanchez, and all of these cultural icons were now speaking to our blackness. So once we in America accepted black as a racial identity, I'm a black man. Then when I came to Jamaica, who did I see? I saw my family. Wow. So that acceptance of the term black connected me immediately to people of color all over the world. And this, of course, led to the Bandung Conference in Indonesia in 1955, where all people of color met, and they didn't allow Caucasian people at that conference. There was a movement to unite people of color against white world supremacy. Malcolm assassinated, Martin King assassinated, Elijah Muhammad departed, the counterintelligence program of the U.S. government in operation, black organizations being decimated, black leaders being destroyed. Now you come into the 70s and now the 80s. If you watch the consciousness movement in the 60s was accompanied by the rise of drugs into the black community and a more pure form of heroin that was killing our people. As consciousness arose, drugs found their way into the black community. What does that tell you? The church was losing power over the mind of the masses. The learning institutions were losing power over the mind of the masses. So you introduce drugs to the masses who were becoming conscious. Then you could begin to break apart those communities with drugs and guns and gangs. Now watch how the language changed. Tony Brown in America used to have a program called Black Journal. New York had a program called Black News. Baltimore had a program called The Black Star. Everything with black in front of it all of a sudden began to disappear. It's Tony's Journal now. Black news gone. Black consciousness dying. Just watch how the language now started to change. Oh, we are now the minorities. When you were thinking black, you knew you were the majority in the world because people of color outnumber white people 11-1 at that time. It's 20-1 now. But as long as you don't see your connection to the people of color around the world, then you can call yourself now a minority. Then you became the disadvantaged. Then you became the people on the lower rung of the socio-economic ladder. And just by changing the language, they began to interfere with our minds. When we were in the 60s, you never heard the term nigger. It was my brother. Even though we may not act brotherly, we were referring to each other as brother and sister. Now, nigger is the appellation. Nigger, yo, nigger. Then you changed God to dog. Yo, dog. What's up, dog? So the language is making you to see yourself not in a loving endearment. How could you tell me that nigger is a term of endearment when after you call your brother a nigger, then you can turn around and shoot him down like a dog in the street? So we were being undermined all the time by social engineering masters. Now I'm coming to this killing. In the 60s, you could take your child to a store to buy a doll. You could put the white doll there. You could put an Asian doll there. You could put a black doll there, and the black child would pick the black doll. Not today. In Africa, we don't want the black doll. We pick the white one. Recently, they had a thing on television where they had a black image, a brown image, a red image, a yellow image, and a white image. And a black child was asked, of all of these, which is the bad one? She pointed to the black. Which is the good one, the best one? She pointed to the white. See? So the scientists are showing how they are beating the work that we did in the 60s. Now, look, I mean, brother, look, I wish I had time, you know, because we are fighting a skillful master that every time you make a step forward, while you are rejoicing over the step forward, they are working to take you several steps backward. And so today we're into bleaching creams now. We're no longer proud of our blackness, but if I can I get some of this bleaching cream? Well, it's all over Africa now. It's all over the Caribbean now, you see? So this is a self-loathing. So when you grow to hate yourself, the next thing is to put a gun in the hand of you who hate yourself, then you will kill yourself and your brother. So now in North America, in all of the cities, black on black crime. In the Caribbean, it is the same. In Africa, it is the same. So the social engineering now is designed to make us, excuse me, hate ourselves and become our own self-destructors. And so it's growing. So now when you look in Port of Spain, the eastern side, is that where most of the killing is?
Yes, sir.
Why, when martial law was set up, why did the soldiers, I'm sorry?
The state of emergency.
State of emergency. Why did the soldiers go there and pick up how many thousands?
7,000. Just over 7,000.
They were white people they picked up?
No, sir.
They were Indians that they picked up?
No, sir.
They were Chinese?
No, sir.
They were all what?
Black people.
Did you have a new prison here that was built?
Yes, brand new prison in Santa Rosa.
And where were these 7,000 housed?
After the other prisons were filled, they sent them to the new prison.
Okay. Then when it's time for Christmas and Carnival, the state of emergency was lifted?
Yes, sir, for December the 5th.
Yes. And all of the blacks were let loose?
Everyone had to be set free.
But now, is it true that in eastern Port of Spain, black men cannot travel from one side of the town to another without fear that they will be attacked by gangs in that portion of the town?
Yeah, they have borderline gang warfare in Laventille and Mova.
Did you know that that's the same in Bermuda? In Bermuda, if you live in the western side of Bermuda, the women can travel from one end of Bermuda to another, but the brothers, the men, cannot go from this area to the area right next to them. So now they're limited travel, because now if they go into another section of Bermuda, they will be beaten or killed. It's the same in North America. This is not an accident, brother. This is by design. So I want to close this. We are the victims of ignorance, and our ignorance is the playground for Satan to manipulate our ignorance and make us into a self-hating, self-destructive, non-productive group of people. There is an answer. There is a solution. I would hope that I would have the pleasure of your company. Regardless to your color, your ethnicity, your racial identity, I would like to meet you. I want you to listen to me or to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad through me, and I want you to weigh what you hear me say. I am not a hater. I am not an anti-Semite. I'm in love with my people in particular, but in love with humanity in general. But I know that my people, whether it is in Trinidad or Barbados or Jamaica or Chicago or New York, we are in the worst condition of other racial and ethnic groups. So we need medicine to heal our wounds. And it does not mean that the Indians don't need some medicine too, or the whites or the Asians. So you come and let's talk. Let's meet. And if Farrakhan is not a friend of Trinidad and Tobago, then you can send me away. But don't send me away on the basis of what Big Brother up north is telling you about me. Come and meet me for yourself. Hear me for yourself, and then judge me. Now, I've been on this show for an hour now.
About an hour and 15 minutes.
An hour and 15 minutes. Well, my brother has questioned me. I have done my best to answer his questions. So you know enough about me right now to make your intelligent judgment about me. I was on television this morning, yes, for about 40 minutes.
Yes, sir. TV6.
TV6. And so I hope to see you. But until then, may God bless you. May God guide and protect you. May He replace ignorance with the best of knowledge that will allow us to take the scales off our eyes and remove the deafness of our ears and make our tongues to speak the wisdom of God. And we together will find a solution to all of the problems that presently plague us. Satan cannot win today. Allah has declared that Satan's time to rule is up, and a whole new world is on its way in. And that is for sure. Thank you for listening, and Brother David, thank you for being the type of brother that you are. Thank you for spreading consciousness to the beautiful people of Trinidad and Tobago. I know that you lost your position after 10 years at the other radio station. And of course, as long as we don't have our own media, we will be subjected. But thanks be to God that you have a brother who Is he the owner of this radio station?
Yes, he is. Kenny Phillips.
Well, I thank God that Kenny Phillips opened his heart and his door
That's it.
and the airwaves to you, that you may continue your good work. And I will always be grateful to you for your invitation to me and your persistence that I should come back to Trinidad. And I want Trinidad to know that I'm here because he persisted. Farrakhan, you must come. And you know, even before I left coming here, people called me and said, oh, there's great anger against you in higher circles. So I don't think it's wise for you to come. And I told my friends, no, I'm going, and whatever God has for me, I will trust in him to get me safely here and allow me the freedom to deliver the message and take me safely home and leave you with guidance that you can make your own communities a decent and safe place to live. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your questions. And thank all that are viewing. Is this live stream?
Yes, it's streamed live on the internet.
I wish that we could have had telephone conversation with the people, but unfortunately, we didn't go to the studio, but the studio came to the hotel. And I am eternally grateful to the owner of the radio station who is here with you, and to the cameraman who is here, and to our own camera crew from the Final Call that is live streaming our words to our brothers and sisters in the United States of America and beyond.
So justice or else? We are getting ready to come up on the 20-year anniversary of the Million Man March, 10-10-15. And I'm curious as to what the or else means.
Whenever God sends a prophet into the world to bring both guidance and warning, in the guidance and the warning is contained a threat. So when the wicked do not respond properly to the guidance that is given and the warning that is given to move away from the wrath of God, then the threat becomes their destruction. So as it was in the days of Noah, when the minds of the people were continually to do evil, Noah warned them. And the warning continued for almost 150 years. And the people went on with their lives. And as both the Bible and especially the Bible and the Quran says, they were drinking, they were partying, they were giving in marriage. They were doing those things that they were doing while they continued to do evil. So in that hour, the threat came to pass, and God killed them all, except those few that got in the ark. And so it was in this dual city of Sodom and Gomorrah that is a real city in Palestine. And the people were engaged in an action that is considered an abomination. And God sent Lot through Abraham to warn them that their behavior was unacceptable to God. And they were offered a chance to change and they did not. So 2 angels entered Sodom. They were guests in the house of the prophet Lot. And the wicked came to the house of Lot seeking to have sex with the angels who were men. And Lot offered them his 2 daughters, and they didn't want the daughters, they wanted the men. And so death came. The cities were overturned. Everyone was killed except Lot and his family, his 2 daughters, and his wife was of those ordained to be left behind. Those things are put in the Bible and Quran as signs and warnings, because in the Bible it says, as it was in the days of Noah, as it was in the days of Lot in Sodom and Gomorrah, so shall it be at the coming of the Son of Man. So yes, what good is it to say justice and there's no threat? We don't have time to play with the principle of justice. Justice is a principle of fair dealing. We have never been dealt fairly since our fathers set the soles of their feet in the Western Hemisphere. Neither have our indigenous brothers and sisters called Native Americans. They haven't been dealt with fairly. Neither have the Mexicans and so many others. So justice is what we want. And we're not playing with the government of the United States of America. We are demanding what God demands of us, and there definitely is an or else from us, but the biggest or else comes from God Himself.
You speak of justice. Clearly, we don't know what that is as long as we've been here. What does that look like? What does that feel like? Is that even obtainable?
You know, that's a great question.
I have there's a lot going on in my mind, Minister.
It's all right. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, justice is a principle of fair dealing. Justice is the law that distinguishes between right and wrong. But he also said, justice is a weapon that God will use in the day of judgment. He said, if justice were in the world, there would not need to be a judgment. But since the world is run by a satanic mind, and justice is not the order of the day, justice is denied. And as Martin Luther King said, the universal arc of justice, or the arc of the universe, bends toward justice. So even if I can't get justice in the courts of America, which are run by white supremacists, that is not the court that ultimately has justice in its grip. So Thomas Jefferson said, I tremble for my country when I reflect that God is just and His justice cannot sleep forever. So what is it? It's what you sow, you have to reap it. That law is at work every single day of our lives. If the courts don't do their job, the law of justice contained in the universe will do that job. No man or woman can escape the consequences of their actions. So in the Quran, there's a section that says every deed has its consequence. And this is the day when the God of justice will give to every man, every woman, every nation what that nation has earned. And so the Quran says you will see every nation bowing down before its book. Everything is written. And the evil of America, a great evil that America has done to the indigenous people, a great evil America has done to the blacks who didn't come here on the Nina, the Pinta, or the Santa Maria, but the transatlantic slave trade is a crime that they have not paid for yet, but this is reaping time. I'm happy to announce to the enemies of justice, your time has come, and you will not escape the wrath of God. And the sad thing is, when Thomas Jefferson said he trembles, he was in present time trembling for his people in a future time. Nobody escapes. So the children of Jefferson today that have lived deliciously based upon what he did, and the evil of what he did, and the justice that he didn't do, but he knew one day they would have to pay. And I am here to warn America, this is that time, and you will pay justice or else. And since you didn't do justice, the or else is now present in America and in the world. This world's time is up.
Do you think white people can help aid in the fight for justice, our generation, the younger people, in a very compassionate and genuine way, and not out of a sense of guilt? This generation speaking.
Well, let's deal with the principle of justice. The scripture says, set up slaughter for the children. Even to the third and fourth generation of them that hate me. You can't get away just because you're white and young from the evil of your parents, unless you are willing to do what you made O.J. Simpson do. He won in the court. The court said he was not guilty. But they went back in civil court and found him responsible. Young white people, you didn't do this, but you're in a place of benefit now because of what your fathers did. I like that movie, The Godfather, because in the end, when Michael was in church at the christening of his sister's child, the priest asked him, Michael, do you believe in God? He said yes. And then, Michael, do you renounce Satan and all his works, boy? And Michael said, I do, but at the same time, he was killing all the members of the 5 families. See, justice, you can't play with it. The hearts of black people want to include white people in the quest of justice. And that's your good heart. But white people now have to earn a pass. And the only way they can earn a pass from what their fathers have done is to accept the responsibility that they're in the good position that they're in because of what was done to us and to the native people of this hemisphere. So my question to you for them is, are you willing to accept responsibility and help in the cause of justice for those who have been deprived? That's your past. But if you prove to be just like your fathers, then prepare slaughter for the children, for the evil of their fathers, even to the fourth and third and fourth generation of them that hate me. Nobody gets a pass today except by the mercy of God. Not you, not I, not your mother, not your father. Everybody has to give an account for how you lived your life. So today, whatever you put out, expect it back. This is the time of judgment and justice. And I thank God for such a horrible hour for the wicked, but a great hour for those of us who have suffered at their hands.
You've lived through so many decades and you've been fighting for justice. And you've been fighting for the equality of black, brown people. Did you ever think that we would still be here? Some people feel, and you know, I talked to my father, and he's just like, oh, you don't know what it's like. You know, you young kids got it good. And it's almost like this sense of, it is a thing of a past. But for me and my generation, I feel like we're still dealing with it in a very real way. Does it feel different for you because you were there fighting and you're here now fighting?
How were we fighting? We were fighting for simple things. Not really for justice. To be accepted by the white man in his places of business, where we were rejected. We couldn't be buried in a cemetery with them. We couldn't go to a toilet that said white, you know. But we wanted to change that. That's not justice. That's simple dignity of a fellow human being. That's not justice. And we had to die to integrate a toilet. We had to die to integrate a lunch counter. We had to kneel down and pray. That's not justice. We never got justice. Even the simple dignity of spending our money with our former slave masters and their children broke us, not them. Integration never helped us, it helped them, because our consumer dollars went more to them than to ourselves. When your father was growing up, if he grew up in the South, we had to spend our money with ourselves because white folk didn't want our dollars in their stores. Boy, that's something. So we had our own black baseball teams. You may not remember, but your dad does. We had our own little things. All of a sudden, Jackie Robinson. Do you think the white man really wanted Jackie, except that Jackie would bring black people to the white ballpark and they would be wealthy while black people got a little bit of money with an elastic band on it from white people? That they give you money and take it right back because you don't know how to use your wealth? Because you've never been taught? No, we wasn't fighting for justice. We wanted to be close to our former slave masters. We wanted to be accepted by them. And so when it looked like they accepted us with this hypocritical trick of integration, we end up right where we are right now, still crying out for justice. You said it yourself. You didn't know what justice was. Justice ain't going to a toilet with a white man. Justice is not going to school sitting with white children. Justice is getting the knowledge that will allow you to provide for yourself. They never wanted you to have that kind of knowledge. So here we are. But the fight is coming to an end. We're in the championship rounds now. And we will win. Real justice comes from God, because a white man don't have it in him to give it.
In terms of police brutality, a report, I just read an article earlier this week that said that the races that are most likely to be killed by police officers are, of course, African Americans and Native Americans at a larger rate because they make up smaller of the population. How important is it to make sure that we are unified between the Black community, the Native American community, and the Latino community as well in this fight?
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, our unity is more powerful than the acquisition of a hydrogen or atomic bomb. We've waded in, prayed in, cried in, crawled in. We've marched, we've sat down and done things that remove dignity from us just to be accepted. We've never tried unity. And even though we talk unity, we don't know what that is. But the enemy does. Because every time we try to unite, he comes in between it to keep us weak so that we can't get the things that we should get that God has asked for us. Freedom, justice, equality. We could get it overnight if we were united. So that's our fight. Our fight today is to unify the black man first. Because you can't get unity with the brown if you're not unified among yourself. You can't get unity with the red if you're not unified among yourself. Charity starts with self and home. Then it spreads abroad. So yes, we want unity with the brown. We want unity with the red. We want unity with those who struggle like we struggle. But the first unity is with self. So Jesus said this, I give you a commandment this day. Moses gave 10. Jesus gave 2. But the 2 commandments that Jesus gave were more powerful than the 10 that Moses gave. So the scripture says, Jesus said, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Let's stop there for a minute. See, if I love God, man, he's worthy to be loved. He's not worthy to be loved with something of myself, because myself is what he gave me. I owe him all. So don't ask me to pledge allegiance. to a flag that hasn't done nothing for me. I give my allegiance to God, who gave me life, who gave me my gift, who gave me eyes to see and ears to hear and a tongue to speak and hands to form what comes as a vision in my mind. Who gives gifts better than God? So I have nothing for a flag that does nothing for me. I owe it all to God. And the second commandment, he said, is like unto the first. Love your neighbor as who? Yourself. One guy was listening to Jesus, and he thought he would be smart, and he asked Jesus a question. Well, who is my neighbor? That's a good question. Because now we're defining who is the neighbor that we should love as ourselves. That's a big thing. Black folk don't know who to love. And you don't know who to love if you don't first love God and then love yourself. How can you love what you don't know? You don't know yourself. And the enemy made sure that we would never know the reality of who we are. Yeah. So Jesus said, well, he didn't answer the man directly. He gave him a parable. A man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and on the way he fell among thieves, who hit him in his head and robbed him of his raiment and left him half dead in the road. A priest walked by. Surely we should love the priest, but he walked by on the other side. Then a Levite came, and a Levite looked at the poor man laying there and did nothing. Well, the priest wasn't neighborly. The Levite wasn't neighborly. But then along came the Good Samaritan, who saw the man laying in the road, poured oil in his wound, bound up his wound, took him to an innkeeper and said, "Innkeeper, I'm giving you 2 pence. If it's more than what I've given you on my return, I'll take care of the bill." Which one of these did the neighborly thing? See, the church has not been our friend. That's why Pope Francis is down in South America. He's back in Rome now. But he asked Ecuador, Bolivia, Uruguay, would you forgive the church? Forgive the church? I thought the church represented Jesus. Did Jesus do anything wrong to the people of Bolivia, to the people of Uruguay, to the people of Ecuador? Jesus is not guilty, but the church is guilty of the slaughter of the indigenous people of this hemisphere. So the Pope asked for forgiveness. But they haven't done the neighborly thing. White America, you've been neighborly to us? Man, if the church has failed, and it really has failed now. So God comes out of the shadows to help us come up out of this condition. So I'm in love with God. He has no equal, no partner. And I ain't sharing my love for God with an enemy that don't deserve my love. It's my people who've been victimized that deserve my love and deserve the love of God. And it is out of that love that I've worked for 60 years. And I'm not tired. And I know I'll be the winner in the end, living or dead. Yeah, I guess I answered that question.
You did. You speak in terms of unifying within us first. I'm curious as to how much does financial wealth contribute to that unifying, and your thoughts on sovereignty, if that is something that will also gain us unity within our culture first as well.
Wealth, of course, can help. But that was the problem with the children of Israel under Pharaoh. They were so enamored by the wealth of Pharaoh, they didn't want to hear God calling them out of Egypt, because he wanted to give them a land so that they could have an independent, sovereign existence under the guidance of God. So, man, they were so fascinated by the wealth of Pharaoh, Moses had to pray to God to destroy the wealth of Pharaoh so that the children of Israel wouldn't be dazzled by Pharaoh's wealth and finally accept God's command to come out of her so that God may make them into the greatest nation that had ever existed. So it is today. We're fascinated by America's wealth, the bling bling, if you will. So many of us think that when we sing a song calling our women female dogs and referring to them as prostitutes and talking about our bust a cap in you and all this vile filth, and the white man gives us money for saying that. You can't talk about them like that, but you can talk about your own like that. That's what makes me sick when I hear you sick Negroes talking about how terrible it is to hate. How terrible it is. We shouldn't hate. Well, if it's so bad that we shouldn't hate, somebody should come in the black community and teach us how to love ourselves and love one another. Then we wouldn't be going to the hospital and to the morgue every weekend and only find a spirit to march when the same killer who has killed us ever since we've been here kills us again. Then we'll march. We should have been marching to stop the violence that we commit against ourselves. So the real question is, if hate is bad, then tell the white man, come into the black community and teach us like Martin taught us to love you. You ought to come in and stop the acts of violence that you do. And somebody got to turn that nonviolence around and teach us nonviolent love toward each other. Look how easy it is for our beloved people to forgive the white man. Kill 9 people. And how easy it was for us to say, I forgive. But that's the way we are. That's the way we've been taught and made. But the question that white folk gotta ask, is the God of justice gonna forgive? Right now, somebody's on the television over the 2 little white boys that was sailing and got lost. And they've raised $130,000, I think, to help find those 2 young boys. But Mr. What's that boy name? The white boy that killed 9 of us in Charleston.
Oh, Dylan. Yeah, Dylan Roof.
Roof. They've raised over $4 million for him to make sure he gets a fair trial. Stop it. No, you don't want a fair trial. You raised $4 million so he could get off.
Right.
like the rest of your brothers do when they kill us. I'm sorry. Your time has come. Your court system is collapsing. We can't find justice in you. So the God of justice is on scene today. And he threatens you with absolute death. He threatens you to take your country from you. It's written in your Bible. Go read it. He takes the kingdom from whom he pleases, and he gives it to whom he pleases. Well, I hope we recognize that it pleases him that we have some of this earth that we can call our own. Now, white folks, you'll have a chance to give us what we demand, and I'm sure you'll act by us like you do by everything you give us. You find a way to take it back. Right. You promised us 40 acres and a mule. We haven't got that yet. You passed the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. You haven't enforced none of them. You passed the voting rights bill, and we were so happy because we could vote now. And then the Supreme Court reversed it recently, the protection clause of it. What do we have that you gave us that you didn't find a way in the skill of deceitful language to take it back? We can't trust your words. We trust the God and the will of God in his word. Justice is coming. Oh, the Bible calls it in a great and dreadful day of the Lord. Great for the righteous, but dreadful for the wicked. That's the time we've arrived at. So we're going to get some sovereignty. We're going to get some land because that's what God has promised. Yes. I think I answered that. I hope I did.
Good.
Riches and sovereignty, right?
Yes.
Yes.
As a woman, as a mother, speaking, with my sisters, how can we help? What is required of us?
Ooh, that's so big. Our women are the key. A nation is taken down through the woman, and a nation goes up through the woman. You mean everything to our struggle. And the sad thing about when a conquering army comes to a nation to fight for whatever that nation has in terms of land or mineral wealth, when the conquering army conquers the army of that nation, they have conquered the men of that nation, and the prize to the conqueror is the woman. They have access to the material wealth of that country. They have access to the real wealth of that country, which is the woman. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, your woman is like your field through which you produce your future. Any farmer that produces a crop, he works to destroy the enemies of that crop. You are our earth. And from you, every good thing that we've ever produced came from you. And the sad thing about it, when you love your black man and you marry him, because in him you find someone that you're attracted to, that you believe will be a good man for you, only to find, as time goes on, he's not all that you thought he should be. And nature has put in you a demand. And nature has put in us a demand on you. Your demand has to be met before our demand from you can be met. The Quran, in the 4th chapter, the 1st verse says, keep your duty to Allah as it ought to be kept. Wow. Allah, who created you from a single essence, and He created your mate of the same, and He put in you a demand that you make on each other. Your nature demands something from a man, and a man's nature demands something from you. You cannot expect the woman to give you what you demand if you, in the first place, don't give her what her nature demands. Her nature demands a man to maintain, to uplift, to help, to guide, to be a provider for and a protector of. That's her nature. And what you get from her in return for being a man is what God put in every woman. The consolation, the care, the love that makes a man willing to go out and work the field or fight the enemy to come back home. To be loved, to be nurtured again by the brilliant mind of a woman that was not just created for pleasure, but she's your second self. And in her is the same thing that's in you from God. And so when you get married, sometimes you have your first child in your husband. That's very disappointing to hear. But Elijah Muhammad set up a class. He knew we were not the men that we could be. Every man out there is capable of satisfying the woman that married him. But she has to know now how to help him to be the great man that he's born to be. And so our women have a double job on themselves. They have to rear the children that come from a marriage, but they also have to help that man to be what they hoped he would be. And that's where we run out of knowledge. And that's why men run from women today into the arms of another man. Oh, it's sad. I'm sorry. I don't mean to hurt the feelings of our brothers and sisters who are listening. I love you all, and I know that no man playing a woman can be a woman. And no woman playing a man can be a man. When the real thing comes along, you have to take your seat. And that's why the world is so upset, because the men are broken. We are broken. And you already have been the booty of the conqueror. We couldn't tell the conqueror, you can't sleep with my woman. In the South, the sheriff could come to the house of a beautiful child of a black man and woman and tell the man, send your daughter out to me. And he would take that young girl and do with her what he pleased and send her back like a piece of garbage. And we suffered that kind of thing. And what do you think that did to a woman? That man was so weak that the white man could come and demand his daughter. And then today, some of us are so doggone weak and wicked, we'll sleep with our daughters. You can't even bring a beautiful girl into the world. And as a woman, it's your duty to protect your child. Not let any man, even if it's your father or the father, and I've seen fathers, boy, sleep with their daughters, make them pregnant, And the woman knows that this is going on, and she don't have the courage to stand up for the life of her child. This is what we confront all the time. That's why we need to be separated from this enemy, so that the disease of having been a slave can be healed. Yeah. We need to be quarantined for a while to let God work on us. As long as you're with the enemy, you're going to continue to be the type of human being that he made you, because he made you into himself. Come out of her, my people, the scripture says. And even Dr. King, in the last year of his life, said, I can see why separation is necessary for a time. Come up with the measles, the mumps, you can't just walk around. They put a sign on your door in the old days, you're quarantined for, so your health can be restored. Elijah Muhammad said it's better to teach separation than to teach prayer. There's nothing more powerful than prayer, but praying in the house of the enemy and living the life of the enemy, you still victimized as a praying slave, a praying freak. So we can continue to pray, because prayer is the greatest force to restrain us from the doing of evil. But as long as you stay in the cesspool that made you sick, all your prayers will never make you righteous. We got to leave him and go into a land of our own, where we can be healed and cleansed and made whole again, that God may use us for his glory. You know, excuse me, my dear sister Monet.
Yes.
You know, I'm full. And the passion that I have is a part of my being at this time, because we're getting closer and closer to a time, and there's no turning back. America is under divine judgment, and so are we. So we can't play around with the truth. We can't use sweet words when it demands straight talk. And who will speak today? A cowardly Muslim that says, I represent the prophet? You're a liar. If you represented the prophet, you would be sending out a warning to a government as low down as the government in which you find refuge for yourself. Cowardly Christians go along to get along. Pastors that are weak. Our children in the street dying, and you in the church with the saved, you in the mosque with the so-called saved, when the problem is in the streets. Yes, sir. That's where Jesus was. Yes. That's where Muhammad was. He wasn't in the mosque praying all the time. The man was out there teaching people, transforming their lives. That's the work of Jesus, not being in a safe place. We got a lot of work to do, my sister. And I'm honored to be on this show with you as we're coming close to the end of our time together. But I heard the beauty of your prayer as you prayed. You prayed for yourself and you prayed for me, that this would be a meaningful hour. of discourse, dialogue. And I hope that I have satisfied your questions, and maybe you have one or two more before our time ends.
I do. I do. What does your day look like? Like, I'm just curious, like what happens when you wake up in the morning? What are you doing throughout the course of your day? Do you watch television? Do you get to have a moment where you're in your backyard and you have a quiet time? Are you reading books? Like, what does that day look like? An average day.
I really don't spend a lot of time reading books. Most of them are 90% false and 10% truth. I don't have time to sift through madness. I read the creation of my God. The Quran says in everything that Allah created, in it, there's a lesson for man if man would be mindful. You're in a book where nothing in it is false. Why should I waste time with your trying to be wise? If God is my teacher, let me feed from the truth. I feed from the words of God. I feed from the creation of God. So when I get up and say my prayers, I read the Quran or read the Bible, I go out and thank God for being able to live on a farm. And I ride in a little buggy and I look at the roses, and when I see they're about to bud, I stop and look at what God created. I don't hear sirens. I don't look at these concrete jungles. I want to feed on God. That's where my peace comes from. I'm not saying I'm a holy man or nothing like that. I just feel good being enveloped by what God has created. What does my day look like? Ask those around me.
I was told a lot of work.
And what is my work? See, my work is teaching. I've been taught by a master. I didn't graduate from college. I finished my 3rd year, and my little girlfriend got pregnant, and I didn't want to stay for the 4th year because I wanted to be a man. She's pregnant, I had to take care of her, and whatever that offspring was that she would bring into this world, so I left my college. She wanted me to continue. My mother wanted me to continue. But I always wanted to be a man. I'm not the type of man that let a woman do for me, except what she's required to do in a marriage relationship. When I was a little boy and I had a girlfriend, she couldn't spend her money. And sometimes she had more than me. But when all my money was done that I spent for both of us to have an ice cream from the ice cream parlor or some little thing that we would do, I would not let her spend her money on me, because a real man don't let a woman take care of him. Can no woman love a man that she's taken care of? You become her child. Her voice is stronger than yours in the house, so don't even try to boss her around, because she the boss, and she knows it even if she don't say it. This bum, he don't have a job.
Minister, you ain't never lie.
I ain't never lied.
Listen, I'm so glad it's coming from you.
But my sister, this is real.
Yeah.
That's the kind of man I wanted to be. I told my wife when we were just girl and boyfriend, I don't ever want no man coming to my house taking my furniture. So I wouldn't buy it if I couldn't afford it. I saved my money, and when I could afford it, I bought it because I know it was mine. I wasn't paying on time, and if I missed it, you gonna come and get it? I bought a car one time, and I missed 3 payments because it was hard times. And the white man said he was coming to get it. I went right in his office. I said, I'm not going to let you take advantage of a hard time that I have. I'm not a thief. I will pay you. But if you come to get that car, I'll burn the car to the ground. No, I'm not joking.
Wow.
I told him I'll kill you. He knew I wasn't playing. See, crazy niggas are the ones that they don't bother too much. What?
Well.
and Kenny Gamble, Lukeman, asked me, his school was having, what do you call it, class reunion, and he wanted to bring me there to speak, and he gave me $5,000 for the speech. And I went right to that man that I owed. I said, here's your money. God favors you when you're willing to die for something.
That's right. Yes, sir.
I bought a gun. My teacher didn't teach me this. But in the day when my teacher was gone, I came a little crazy, And I bought a gun for my wife, and I bought a gun for me. We lived in a neighborhood that was kind of like when you get a place and you don't really understand your surroundings. They didn't want no black folk in there, but there was 1 or 2 hanging around. But they came and threw bottle in my window, and my little granddaughter was sleeping on the floor. I got my pistol, and I went looking for him. And then I decided to go right to the police station. See, there's something about this man Elijah. That when you know him, he takes fear out of you. When you know yourself and you know God, you're not a weak, spineless, punctified man. So I went in the police station and asked for the chief, whoever was the head of that. I said, sir, I went out a few days ago and I bought 2 guns, one for my wife and one for me. I said, now you all know how to make examples of little black children that are doing something wrong, but you don't know how to do that for your own, but I do. So the next little white boy that comes throwing something in my window, I'm gonna put a bullet in his you-know-what. They said, Farrakhan, if you do it, we'll come after you. I said, you'll just have to do that. I ain't never seen them white people. Ain't nobody ever throw no more stuff in my window. There comes a time in your life when you can't take no more. That's the time you decide it's either life or death, but tyranny has to cease. That's the time we're living in now. No more Trayvon Martin. No more Tamir Rice. No more Eric Garner, because that's always going to be until we decide.
Yes.
That must end. And when you decide that it will end, because then you're ready to pay whatever the price is to bring it to an end.
We've been through a historic time. this last election process, the election of Barack Obama, has excited people all over the world. In the very beginning of this process, when Barack Obama announced his candidacy, did you ever believe that we would be at this place in time celebrating the soon-to-be inauguration of the first African-American president?
No, I didn't believe it, but I'm happy for it. This young man seems to be driven by a force that's bigger than politics. Watching him ascend, 4 years ago, he spoke at a Democratic convention and electrified the convention and the country. 4 years later, he's the president-elect of the United States of America. This is a meteoric rise, which for me as a spiritual man, I always try to look for the hand of God. So when you see a man do what this young man has done in these last 2 years, when you look at the audiences that he has attracted, when you look at the fact that he has black, white, brown, red, yellow, Muslim, Christian, Jew, Buddhist, Hindu, male, female, gay, straight. And when you look at his audience and you watch him deliver, he makes a oneness in the spirit of his audience. The only time I ever saw something like this in a politician was with Bobby Kennedy. But Bobby Kennedy never to the magnitude of Barack Obama. So I think to myself that, you know, people that are born to do something, they just ascend. And it seems to me that this young man has been driven from an early time in his life to be great. And for a man to become a state senator, then a U.S. senator, but a junior senator for only 2 years in the Senate, and then throw his hat in the ring for the biggest political prize in the country and in the world, and then watch him maneuver through a minefield of opposition to become the president-elect. It's something that I thought I would never live to see. And when you're my age and those who are older than I, many of our elders make this a moment that they are happy as they leave this earth because they see something that they never thought they would ever see.
You typically, and correct me if I'm wrong, don't normally endorse candidates. I haven't typically seen you endorse candidates, but you came out and endorsed Senator...
No, I never did endorse him.
No.
No, I was very careful because I knew that if I endorsed him, that would create a problem for him. So at Savior's Day last year, I talked about him, but in very beautiful and glowing terms, stopping short of endorsing him. And unfortunately, or fortunately, however we look at it, the media said I endorsed him. And then, of course, the Washington Post came out with an article. I can't remember the name of the writer, and he said, we have to give Obama the Farrakhan litmus test.
Yes.
And then subsequent to that, the ADL and Mr. Foxman put it to his campaign, and they responded, and I think in a very intelligent way, but Mr. Foxman said they didn't go far enough. He would have to denounce his pastor Reverend Jeremiah E. Wright. And so right after I spoke in those glowing terms about him, Mr. Tim Russert, when they had the debate
Yes.
with Mrs. Clinton, brought me up and then went back 20-some years ago to throw something at this brother that I'm sure he did not know how to defend, and it wouldn't have been wise for him to defend. So he renounced my so-called endorsement and support. But that didn't stop me from supporting him.
No, it didn't. And what I thought was very interesting was not the press. The press did what the press always does, which is attempt to create division. I thought what was profound was how you handled it, and how you handled Obama's political move to renounce was very different than how Reverend Wright handled Senator Obama's response. Can you talk a little bit about the wisdom that you felt was necessary at that time in your response, not only to the nation of Islam, but to the United States, so that you couldn't be further used by the media to create greater division between Senator Obama and his people?
I try always to look at what is the bigger picture. When Reverend Jesse Jackson ran in '84, and I endorsed Reverend Jackson through the weight and support of the Nation of Islam behind Reverend Jackson, raised money for Reverend Jackson and used the FOI to protect him and his family before the Secret Service got involved. So Reverend Jackson, unfortunately, at a certain point, had to denounce me because it was said that I said something that I didn't say. And so in his renunciation of me, I took the approach that Reverend Jackson is more important, and what he was attempting to do for our people was more important. So I would never respond to Reverend Jackson in an ugly way, but asked our people to stay behind him in unity so that at the convention in San Francisco, he could argue for and extract from the Democrats something better for our people. Well, now it's many years later, and Obama is in a much bigger, brighter picture than was Reverend Jackson. If my ego is involved, then I act in a silly way. But I saw the bigger picture. They said, well, Farrakhan, he threw you under the bus. I said, well, it's not how you are thrown under the bus, it's how you land. And if you land where the bus just rolls, you get up, dust yourself off, and go on. Barack is the bigger picture. I have never seen any black man in our history attract our people, give them hope in the way that Barack has done. If you love your people and you want to see your people rise, and you see someone who is doing that for your people, then you subordinate your personal pain to the greater mission, which was, brother, ascending to the top of the mountain. One of a great rapper, I won't call his name, he visited me and he said, you know, Farrakhan, I was a little upset with brother, the way he handled you. I said, well, in one of your raps, you referred to me as a general. And, you know, generals have to make decisions. And sometimes when you have a hill that you're trying to capture, that may shorten the war and lessen the casualties of war. And you have all of these fine troops here, but you have to give the command to those who are under you to capture that hill. You know that life is going to be lost, but the value of the hill is greater than the sacrifice of life. I said to brother, I said, this man is not trying to capture a hill. He's trying to capture the mountaintop of this present world. So how he gets there is important, but we who are those that have to subordinate our personal hurt and pain over what he may have had to do, then let's put that where it belongs and get him to the mountaintop.
You talked about the historical implications, that there has not been anyone since Kennedy that has mildly been able to capture the hearts and minds of the American people. But putting it in a global context, there are a lot of connections to Nelson Mandela, the global nature of his candidacy, the fact that it was history making as the first African to serve as an elected president of South Africa, the fact that the entire world was excited about him being elected president, and in many cases the kind of messianic feel that you have around Obama. I remember in conversations that you and I have had before where you've talked about African Americans' need in particular to no longer subscribe to the messianic leadership model. How is Obama going to be challenged moving forward when there has been this feeling of him being the Messiah put around him, not a self-proclaimed one? And how can the American people assist him by not making him a Messiah, but making him a president?
In my remarks during that Savior's Day convention, I said he is a herald of the Messiah. The Messiah never appears in a political form, but always in the spiritual. The Jews are looking for the Messiah. The Christians are looking for the return of Christ. The Muslims are looking for one called the Mahdi and the Messiah coming together at this time period. And all of the prophecies of this messianic figure is that he would unite all of the tribes, so that in the scriptures of the Bible it says, in Christ there is no Jew, no Greek, no male, no female, no bond, no free, all become one in Christ. The Mahdi and the Messiah, from the Muslim point of view, do the same thing. They unite humanity where there are no more borders that separate me from you, or race from race, or color from color, but it is a new mentality that the Messiah brings to the world. So when I looked at Barack Obama and I look at his DNA, a white mother, an African father, well, how could he not want to bring people together? He said in one of his speeches, this is in my DNA. Then you see his dear mother married an African Muslim, so she had to have some respect for, affinity for Islam. So when his father, Barack Obama Sr., failed, she married again an Indonesian who was also a Muslim, then took the young man to Indonesia, where he grew up in a multiracial ethnic society, but a society that was some Christians, but mainly a Muslim country. Then they go to Hawaii, where again, multiracial, multi-ethnic, you know. Then he comes to continental United States of America, somewhat conflicted because he wants to find a root in himself. And he ends up on the south side of Chicago, meeting many pastors, many influential mentors, if you will, that gave him a root in himself, but nothing could change the way this young man felt about humanity. And so as he ascends even greater than Brother Nelson Mandela, because he ascends in a country that's the world leader. So in his ascension, the world expects more from him than it would expect from any prior president, and the Muslim world expects more from him because he knows something of Islam. He has a comfort zone, I believe, with some of the preachings of Islam, though he is a Christian. So with that kind of background, he has the, I would call it the innate ability. If he follows what his mission is in life, he will bring people together. And that, I believe, is his mission. And from the highest place in the world, which is the presidency of the United States of America, that young man, God willing, can do much to bridge gaps inside America, and more importantly, help to regain the image of America that has been destroyed in the last 8 years.
And you said a lot there. I want to come back on a couple of those points. The first being, you have been able to see at its best and worst the relationship between races in the United States. You, in many cases, have played a role in trying to address those issues of conflict in many cases, especially between black and white. You talked a little bit about Obama being a unifier, but you and I both know that ultimately there is a message that's put forth and then people have to receive. How have you seen America respond differently than you ever have before? And do you think that is unique to Obama, or are we seeing a tide change in the racial dynamic in this country?
I think it's both. It's unique to him because of his uniqueness, but also he arrives on the scene at a time of what we believe is universal change. The dissatisfaction that is in the totality of the human family always has to bring forth one that will address that dissatisfaction and bring about a change. It appears that in the political world, Barack Obama has answered that call of the dissatisfied for change. And this dissatisfaction is not just a black dissatisfaction. It is the dissatisfaction of the human family with the governments that they live under, and the lack of fulfillment of their basic needs, which are their human rights, that are being denied. So I believe that Barack has come to a position of power at a most unique time in history.
It's interesting because we understand as people of faith that a messenger is always sent for a specific time and a specific place with a specific word. Could there have been a Barack Obama at this time without a George Bush?
You are correct. You know, there has to be the circumstances that give rise to the individual to fit the time and the circumstances. It's not just George Bush, because I don't want to limit this to his 8-year term, but it's many terms of lying to the American people. It's many terms of making policies that ill affect Africa, the Middle East, South America, the Caribbean, the isles of the Pacific, and Asia. So this dissatisfaction with American hegemony, if you will, is growing outside of America, but inside of America, there's growing dissatisfaction with the way government is handling the needs, the rights, and the interests of the American people. So he comes at like the culmination of this tremendous dissatisfaction to be the agent of change. Now, my dear brother, Brother Barack also would not be where he is if the climate didn't present the environment for his rise. And I watched him, you know, having to denounce his pastor and Brother Farrakhan. But the moment people thought, oh boy, we got him, he retreated to his room in the midnight hour and gave one of the most brilliant speeches on race and promoted the dialogue again between the two people. He has been fortunate that every negative that was thrown at him, he rose above it. Now, you know, I'm going to say this, and I think there were forces that were always playing the race card.
Yes.
So that they could ignite in Caucasian people their worst, at the same time deny him his objective. So I wondered to myself, you know, why is CNN doing this big program on the condition of black people? And they played it over and over again. And of course, we were involved in it because it's nice, we thought, to highlight our condition. But Elijah Muhammad said to me, no one man can rise above the condition of his people. That's a principle. Here's Barack at the very top. Here's our people now. What is our real condition in light of his meteoric rise? And will his meteoric rise to the presidency really affect change in the condition of the masses of his people? Okay, so when I watched that production start with a woman pregnant but no man, and then it can degenerates, and you see some good in it, and then it ends with black women, the greatest purveyors of the AIDS virus. And if you go back and research, I could be wrong, but I don't think so. After that showed over and over and over again, his poll numbers began to change. Because the subtle message was, if you bring him to the top, look at what he's dragging with him. See? And then all of a sudden, the bubble busted with the economy. See? So there were other forces militating against the racial forces that were being played. Then there was a commercial on television. It was the most stupid commercial. I wondered what it was. A black man in a tub, a bubble bath, with a white towel over his forehead, and two white men at the foot of the tub with straws blowing bubbles. Now, we look at these things and we may laugh, but You know, God says in the Quran, he made us, those of us who are spiritually in tune, aware of subtleties. Now, the subtle message was, if you let that black man get into the White House, he'll have us at his foot blowing bubbles while black folks sit back and relax. I'm not misreading. I am reading the whole racial dynamic that he kept rising above. The last one was when Mr. McCain brought Governor Palin in with as his vice presidential running mate. Then the talk was the real American. He's a real American, as though Barack is not a real American. What makes him not real? Well, maybe he's black. What makes him not real? Well, people trying to challenge where he was born, his citizenship, and all of that. But at every turn, there was something that happened that made people rise above the racial dynamic to see that this young man, like, we're going to give him a chance to change this dynamic.
And part of what even went beyond that, I mean, the work that you've done, not only just the Million Man March, but the work that the Nation of Islam has done to touch the lives of black men and black families, can't be disputed. But what has this image, for me it was, the first time I got emotional about this campaign was the night of the DNC, when Michelle spoke. And after Michelle spoke, those babies came up on stage. And after the babies came up on stage, then Obama comes via satellite. And to me, there was this message that even though my wife and my babies are on stage, I need to make sure I'm with them. And there was this picture of the black family that Americans, some black Americans, some white Americans, Asian Americans, Latino Americans had never seen before in real life. What is the real potential of a Barack in the White House? Ability to do in many cases what the Million Man March did 10, 12, and 13 times fold. When you talk about his ability to be able to bring with him black men, black families, will we really be able to quantify how that will impact men and women in communities that were lacking hope?
Well, he has raised us beyond, mentally, where we've ever been. He's given our people hope that we have never had. When you see gangbangers, young teenage boys that never thought they might live to see 20 or 21, stand in line 4 and 5 hours to vote for him. When I see the impact that he's had on children, little black children who no longer have to feel, I've got to be an NBA basketball player, NFL football player, great track star, great golfer, a great tennis player to escape the ghetto or escape the conditions under which I have grown. But now I can aspire to be a world leader. That's a genie that you can never put back in the bottle. So since Barack has raised our hope to that level, what can he do for the masses? If he creates 5 million jobs in trying to produce a green economy, can we fit in that if we're dropping out of school or we are unqualified to handle a job in that economy that he hopes to create? So the work of the Million Man March, the work of a Reverend Jackson, a Sharpton, the work of the black church is now elevated because now we have to make a people ready for the time in which we live. So our job, it seems to me, in backing him is to be more earnest, more dedicated, more zealous in working in our communities to build our people.
This effect of creating and showing this family, in many cases, didn't just affect black folks, but there were millions of white people that voted for him. Do you believe that this was a byproduct of seeing this intact black family, creating this humanity? Because Obama and Michelle and those babies became more than just the Democratic candidate. They really became the Obamas. And was part of that what allowed white people who never may have voted for a black person before to see the humanity in the Obamas and not just see him as a black man?
I'm sure that that had some effect in some white people who voted for him. But this wasn't the Huxtables
Right.
on television. This is the real thing. A loving husband, a loving wife, a loving father, a loving mother, and two very beautiful children. That gave us as a people with broken families some hope that we too can produce a family like that. So this young man all the way around has been exemplary from my vantage point for us, for the American people, and for the whole world to look at. Now the challenge, his great challenge, is that he comes to the pinnacle of success and power at a time that we believe America is under divine judgment. And that disturbs me because it is predicted in both Bible and Quran that America would be afflicted with unusual rain and hail and snow and wind and earthquake and drought and famine, which is a worldwide phenomenon now, but specific to this country where every week, every month, there's a calamity.
Well, you talked a little bit about that during Savior's Day and the last interview that we had.
Yes.
And do you believe that this economic crisis that we're in is just the beginning? And is it an apocalyptic piece that we're looking at?
Yes, I believe that. I believe that America's internal policies toward us as a people have to be addressed with justice. I believe that America's policies in the Middle East, Africa, South America, the world, people don't hate America. They hate the policies of a government that has ill-affected the peoples of the world. So Barack comes to this pinnacle at a time when it is going to demand of him a real change. He's surrounded by people of the old mindset. But the old mindset won't work today. And if America is going to escape the judgment of God, then real change, and I'm not talking about little change, I'm talking about the real change that will promote justice and equity and freedom inside America and justice and equity in the world. dialogue. Truthful dialogue that gets us past the media manipulation of persons, events, and the truths of persons and events.
On this episode of Farrakhan Speaks, the Alex Jones interview.
The nation is not now what it could be if truth, unfettered, would be given to the American people. And perhaps through this dialogue, that might happen. Thank you so much, Mr. Jones, for honoring us with your presence. We have watched you as you have watched us, and I have learned a lot from InfoWars and some of the wonderful things that you have done. And I thought long and hard about accepting the invitation. And you're right, I don't do a lot of interviews, but I thought that this was something special. And so I wanted you to feel completely free, like you were at home, and I want you to ask me the questions that your many listeners would like to know about Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam. And there is nothing off limits. You can ask whatever you please, and we'll create the dialogue.
Well, I have to say, thank you for having me in your home and with your family. Driving over here, I talked about some of the reasons that I wanted to interview you. And then when I had a chance to be in your home right before the interview, you basically mirrored what I had to say. So in your own words, I'd like you to really, for the TV viewing audience out there, go over some of the interesting things that you had to say to me and to the audience, because it just dovetailed exactly where I was going. And I have to say, I don't think I've ever had that happen before with an interview. So I'm really glad this is happening here today, because as you know, there are forces that are trying to divide and conquer humanity, and we're really coming to a crossroads where people are being told to choose a side, but I don't think the sides they're telling us to choose are real sides. So I'm trying to get people to think outside the box, and when I spoke to you earlier, that was basically your main focus. So I think this interview is meant to happen for a reason, so thank you so much for giving us the time in your busy schedule. So please just if you could recapture what you told me in there earlier, it was very interesting.
Well, the idea of dialogue, truthful dialogue that gets us past the media manipulation of persons, events, and the truths of persons and events. I'm grateful to have an opportunity to talk to your audience as well as my own, because I felt that I've been talking to black people for 60 or more years, and black people understand me pretty well. But white people don't know me and may not understand me. I had a Jewish rabbi in my home, and he was telling me how certain words that I spoke hurt him and them as a people. And I listened carefully to his critique. One of the things about critics if you can really listen to your critics sometimes are better for you than your so-called friends, because your friends tell you what they think you want to hear. But a critic will write about you or talk about you in a way that, if you have wisdom, you look deep into what your critics say. So I went away from that dialogue with the Jewish rabbi, and I started thinking of language and the best and proper use of language to convey ideas. Now, black people, I know because I'm black and I've come up from among my people. But to have a chance now to speak to a white audience, mainly who may be conservative in their culture and thoughts and desires, and for me to be able to represent the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to that group and answer questions that they are interested in hearing a truthful answer to, then by this dialogue and these cameras and looking into each other's eyes and understanding that we're two people interested in truth. We're two people that live in the greatest nation on this earth, but the nation is not now what it could be if truth, unfettered, would be given to the American people. And perhaps through this dialogue that might happen.
Well, that is exactly what I hope to try to discuss with you today. So I'm glad that you're, basically, I guess in the spirit or in your gut, wanting to go the same direction, because this nation is being basically destroyed from within. And while the people of the nation of every race, color, and creed are being played off against each other, these big global multinationals are tax exempt, diplomatic immunity, they can do whatever they want. And then I see the media on both sides, of conservative and liberal, basically turning it all into a big spectacle, everyone fighting with each other. And there's some real beefs and real issues within that fight. But overall, it's synthetic. Above it are the social engineers who are attacking the family. Doesn't matter what color your family is. Who are attacking our jobs, shipping them overseas. Doesn't matter what color your family is. There's thousands of issues here. And you're one of the only prominent leaders, be they of any, race, color, creed, we're all the human race, that addresses that there is a conspiracy. So, in your own words earlier, speaking about conspiracy, there are millions of people a year charged around the world with conspiracy to rob banks, conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to fraud. But how is it that the power elite, it's impossible that they're in a conspiracy?
In the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, his great teacher, Master Farad Muhammad, who came to enliven the black people in particular and raise us from a dead level to give us life spiritually, mentally, morally, economically, intellectually, etc. He taught us that he never used color in this question and answer. He asked the question, who are the 85%? Who are the 10%? And who are the 5%? And in the answers that Mr. Muhammad gave that we study, 85% of the people don't understand the law of cause and effect. And they believe that all of this great wonder is from a mystery God. They don't know that God is as real as you and I sitting across the table from each other. And wherever there is an effect that is real, the cause is just as real, though oftentimes the hidden hand that's manipulating and creating the effect and the circumstances that begin to divide and destroy. This kind of satanic mind is absolutely in control. And that satanic mind is hiding with a mask of humanity and civility, but now it is gradually being exposed. So 10% run 85%. 10% are those that are privileged, those that are blessed with education and some degree of wealth, that 85% don't share. And it doesn't make any difference whether you are white or black or Indian or whatever your ethnicity is, and it doesn't make any difference what your religion is, whether you're Christian or Muslim or Jew. There are those at the top who guide and govern, who are not necessarily the friend of the masses of the people that they are governing. So it is the 5%, are just a small group who know the truth, who understand the law of cause and effect, and they don't believe in a mystery God that's somewhere making things happen. If there's a real evil, then there's a real devil. If there's a real saint, then there's a real good person doing saintly things. So here we are. Now a conspiracy absolutely is in vogue. And I say this humbly, but I've asked certain people who say, well, you're a conspiracy theorist, and they call you the same. I said, but do you read the scriptures of the Bible and Quran? Is not Satan real? Evil is real, so Satan is real. Evil is preponderant in the earth, and that is because the mind of Satan, that is being transmitted through religion, through education, through the economics and politics of the situation, so that Satan is in control of a vast enterprise of institutions that foster ideas that put human beings against themselves and against God and against each other. So there's real conspiracy, and we are in the middle of it as we are dialoguing.
That really is a revolutionary thought, that if you question the establishment, you question what they're saying when they're known liars, you're a conspiracy theorist. That's like saying you're a heretic. Okay, well, if we're a heretic against the system, I guess we're a heretic against the devil. Because this system, undoubtedly, you couldn't call it good. And from my research, that's my concern. The 5%, the 1%, the 1/10 of 1% that actually run and control, manipulate things, they believe they're going to end up winning. They believe that they're getting ahead of people by keeping folks dumbed down. But common sense shows, and just my gut tells me, you don't screw people over and then long term get away with it. It comes back on you. And I think the people serving this system are some of the most deceived out there, because they know how the world really works, but they've decided to basically try to screw over their fellow humans as if they're going to get ahead by doing that. I mean, just anybody who's God-fearing in their gut level has to know that's a lie.
Well, Mr. Jones, in reality, there are those who go along to get along. And there are those who will take money or position or promises of nearness to power to become an instrument of power. They know what they're doing, but they do not know the vast evil that they are a part of. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, my teacher, said, we are living now in a very dangerous time. He said there never has been a time where on the earth there is 100% dissatisfaction. Whites are dissatisfied, blacks are dissatisfied, there are Jews and Gentiles that are dissatisfied. Well, what is creating the dissatisfaction? It is the deprivation of rights and privileges. It is the deprivation of truth. It is the deprivation of justice. It is the deprivation of equity. It is the deprivation of equality of opportunity that each human being should have to bring out of themselves what God has put within, that they in their person may glorify God and create a world better than the world in which we find ourselves. So the politicians today, I looked at the many Republicans and Democrats that are trying to win the nomination of their party. And it says to me, you know, it's like I don't want to be vulgar, but it's like you, in any major city, you see women undressed, showing their wares for a John to buy them. And it's like politicians who don't have money, but have ideas. And they parade themselves before rich and powerful people to get money, apparently for their ideas that the rich agree with. But the moment that they become what they're looking to become, they find that the rich have an agenda for them, that the rich have something to ask of them, like the John asks of the prostitute. And that's one of the things that I admire about Mr. Trump, because he told them all, I don't want your money. And when a politician does not want money from the rich, he's freer than the others to really do good for the masses of the people. And I think that today we are in the midst of the darkest hour in American history. And so if we don't make the right move with the right people at the right time, the America that we know, we're not going to see it become great again.
I'd like to speak some more, if you would, about Donald Trump, because I personally just had my snapshot view of him, seeing him on TV, shows like The Apprentice. I mean, I knew about his businesses and things. But then as he became more and more prominent in the race, and the last 6 months has been in the front runner, I saw the media doing what they've done to you, myself, and many others, really taking over and over again what he said out of context countless times. And it didn't even mean I totally agree with what he was saying, but I could see the fix was in, that they really didn't like him. Then I saw the Republican and Democrats giving money against him. And then I saw him say, hey, we're going to start taxing these big brokerage firms that are tax exempt, make them bring their money back here. We're not going to have NAFTA and GATT one-sided to ship our jobs to other countries. He said, I'm not against China and India, but you know, I'm sorry, there's no way to do business here the way they've set it up. All these multinationals wanted to move overseas, so they wrote laws to make it more conducive. And that's really where he's got them mad. And so undoubtedly, the establishment is after him. And now he's come out and pointed out that Bill Clinton has settled rape cases and said, you know, forget going after Bill Cosby. Let's see Bill Clinton gone after. That tells me right there that he's for real. And then talking to some of his high-level campaign people, they talk about the fact that Trump used to, and he told me this on air, he used to just be focused on business and life. He's just now, the last few years, looking into what's happening and finding out the country's been sold out. I'm not trying to even fully endorse Trump here. All I know is the anger of the power structure towards him is real. And so I think everybody should investigate more why that is. I think it's because he does get on the stage and says, listen, I'm not going to lie, I bought all these people on this stage. That's just how this country works. I don't want to do that. So from your experience in all, tracking the media, experiencing demonization campaigns, it's a big deal to have Louis Farrakhan come out and say, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan come out and say, hey, we should look at Trump. Can you flesh that out and elaborate? Because undoubtedly, they're going to try to take that and then twist it.
Well, I said recently that if the American people voted for Trump, he could take them into the abyss of hell. He's free, he's rich, he hates political correctness, and rightly so. But he said some things that I would hope that he would get around him persons who could help him, because as a businessman par excellence, he has people around him to help him do business. But if he says, let's go in to Iraq and take the oil.
Well, I mean, not putting words in your mouth, Minister Farrakhan, but are you saying you're attracted to the fact that he is a maverick and that he says what he's really thinking, but at the same time, you're saying he needs to get the bigger picture to understand what's going on?
If he goes into Iraq and takes the oil, that's a kind of a thuggish mentality. America has the power to do these things, but it will not bring the results that America desires. Bush and the neocons, when they went into Iraq, I warned President Bush that what you are doing and the way you are doing it, you will increase terrorism, you will not diminish it. It proved, my words to him proved correct, and I warned him that the coalition would fall apart from him and he would ultimately have to go it alone. Now here is our president. Now I'm talking about Barack Obama, because the job that President Bush started was not finished. So in comes Obama, and when he was campaigning, he was a new and fresh and beautiful idea, but when he gets into office, he becomes the extension of the policies of the neoconservatives. They surrounded Bush, they surrounded Barack Obama, and now just 2 weeks ago in Washington, there was all of these people who are behind the drones. And they were saying that in these drones that go out to kill people that America feels are a threat to their policies, none of that happens without Barack Obama's signature. So you took a man, we gave you the best that we had, but you took him, you gave him the Peace Prize.
Can you specifically, though, speak to, there's so many issues I want to get to with you about where you think the future of this country is going if we wake up, if we transcend this conditioning, versus where we're going if we continue to follow the plan that these social engineers have for America. And you said you go back to Trump.
America has potential. The people of every ethnic and racial group live in America. The whole world lives here. If America could become what Christ taught, or what Muhammad taught, or what Moses and the Israelite prophets taught, America could be the basis of the kingdom of God. That's the ultimate positive aim of those who want to see America survive. But, you know, I'm really concerned because Mr. Trump has hit on some very negative things with Mrs. Clinton and her husband. And I think it's dangerous for the future of politics and for the future of America when we become uncivil in our discourse. I was with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad one day, and prior to that I was with Brother Malcolm, and we were at Boston University, and Malcolm was addressing a room full of about 500 scholars. And before he got there, a reporter had told him something negative about Dr. King and his morality. And he stood in front of that audience and he brought it up and said negative things about Dr. King. A Caucasian man that was there jumped to his feet and condemned those words and then ran to the telephone to call Dr. King. He knew Dr. King personally. Dr. King was not at home, but his dear wife, Coretta, answered the phone. He came back to the room. He had not talked with Dr. King, but the word of what he said about Dr. King got back to Mr. Muhammad. Mr. Muhammad called Brother Malcolm in, and he said, in your public discourse, you never attack people personally. You go after their program, the falsity of their ideas, but you never let it become personal. In this dialogue between Mr. Trump as the potential standard bearer of the Republican Party and Mrs. Clinton, who has brought her husband beside her in her battle to get to become the nominee of the Democratic Party. If they start down this road of bringing up negative things about Bill Clinton, and they bring up whatever they can discover about Mr. Trump, this political campaign will degenerate into something like two children in a crib.
Well, I agree with you.
I just want to finish this point,
Sure.
Mr. Jones. Two children in a crib, and one child reaches into his diaper and picks up some fecal matter and rubs it in the face of the other one, but the other one's diaper is hanging lower, and he reaches in and gets something and puts it in the face of the other. As children, you might look at it and say, laugh and say, oh, that's funny. But when two adults who are leading parties in the most powerful nation on earth degenerate the dialogue into that kind of personal thing where we knock out each other with the bad of who we are. My mother used to say, you don't have to lie about anybody because the truth about everybody is bad enough. None of us come through this world without sin.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I'm not here to defend Trump on every front, and I've got my own questions, and I tend to myself not try to get into personal stuff. In fairness, when I brought that up, I didn't point out the Clintons are trying to basically go after him, saying he doesn't like women and stuff, making it up. They even said Bernie Sanders, is sexist with no. It's just crazy. They're using. You talked about political correctness, and that's what I want to get into with you. You have come out. I mean, for me, political correctness is about getting everybody fighting with each other, taking all these phantoms of racist or sexist things and getting everybody upset about words, while all the big oppression of everybody's rights with the NSA and the rest of it is going on. I mean, that's my view, is that it's a way to squash debate, open dialogue. Minister Farrakhan, what is your view of political correctness?
I think the type of political correctness that the media and those in power want to promote is robbing people of the freedom of thought and speech. I would like to sit with a person and be free to say what is on my heart. And if I'm incorrect, then correct me. But if I have to be politically correct, like Paula Dean, I'd like to bring her up. Now, Paula's from the South. And in the South, in the North, when white folk are together, they might say, that nigger or that nigger. And it's just as common as saying ice cream and pie when they refer to black people. Political correctness that robs you of freedom of speech, even if you're wrong. But to punish somebody who has been calling us out of that name or in that name since we've been here, and then take her off of television and make it seem like she's some wicked woman who just used the word, and then our comedians will come on television and you say nigga, 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 nigga all day long, and it's to some a term of endearment. But Elijah Muhammad never wanted us to use such term in regards to ourselves, and we didn't like anybody using that term toward us. But political correctness, if I disagree with homosexuality, if I disagree with same-sex marriage, if I'm looking at the greatest athlete in the Olympics of '76, and he wants to be a transgender, I struggle with that. Not to condemn the man like I'm his judge, or condemn the woman who says nigger like I'm the judge, but when we dialogue, we correct misperceptions. That is what makes Trump acceptable to so many white people who feel, damn, I can't be myself now. I can't say what I really feel. I'll pay a political price. So Mr. Trump says, to heck with that. I'll tell you what's on my mind. And that is freeing a lot of people that like what he is doing. Political correctness has its place. But for me, as a student of my teacher, I think I should always be dignified in my expression, although sometimes in passion, I lose it.
Absolutely.
And so I thought about, when they said Farrakhan, he wants to kill all white people, and he's advocating 10,000 fearless men to go out and kill white people, as though I'm insane. That's insanity. And I've been teaching for 60 years, sir. And no one who follows me has ever gone out and killed a white person, harmed a Jewish person, bombed a synagogue, or even put some swastika on a synagogue, because that's against our religion, to deface a house of worship. I'm saying that to say this. When I said in Florida, naming all the blacks that got shot down, and according to something I just read where black people, one black man every 28 hours is shot by a policeman. And young black men are 9 times more likely than other Americans to be killed by police officers in 2015, according to the findings of the Guardian newspaper. 1,134 deaths at the hands of law enforcement officers happened last year. As a black man who loves my people, I'm grieved not only at police killing us, but I am grieved at our killing of each other, which sometimes is 10 times more than what white policemen have done. So in my passion against that, and this has been gradually increasing with me over the years, I said, if the federal government does not intercede to see that justice comes to us, because that's the government's job. It's not my job to kill my killer. It's the government's job to arrest the killer, bring them before a court of law, and punish them for their misdeed. But when the government fails to do it, what are we to do? We have to defend our lives. And so I said, stalk them wherever you find them. Not everybody, just the ones that kill us out of the law of justice. If the government won't arrest them and do that, somehow we're going to ultimately do that, and then it leads to what they'll say, it's a race war. No, we are not in any position at all to engage in a race war. It's ridiculous, it's destructive, it's suicidal. However, persecution in the Quran, it says, is worse than slaughter. And you talk about 1776, and you are so right. But in 1776, America had enough. The colonial people under Britain had enough. So when Patrick Henry said, give us liberty, or we are willing to pay the price, which is death, you force people into that when government fails to do its job to redress the grievance of the people who are suffering. And so I pray that, Mr. Trump will not want to go into Iraq and take the oil, because that's what the neocons sent President Bush into Iraq to do. And it's a blowback now, and the end will be that America will be into the greatest war that she has ever been in, the war that is in the scripture called Armageddon, and it's building to that as you and I are speaking.
Extremely powerful. Just a question on that subject. I will put this interview out basically unedited. I mean, we'll put a lot of clips in and articles and things, but we're going to put almost the whole interview out basically. Mainstream media, they're going to take just what you said, even though you quoted Patrick Henry and the rest of it. I guarantee you they're going to take that and just show the clip again out of context. And they do that with me too. So I'm asking you, how do we deal with that when there's nothing we can do? I guess mainstream media is losing credibility, losing ratings. Even USA Today a few weeks ago admitted television for politics is dead. It faces its mortality. So I think I just answered my question. They've discredited themselves, but still they just go on lying, they go on twisting, because I can't disagree with anything you said. about standing up for yourself if justice isn't done?
Well, sir, that's what government is for. We would like an ordered society. Who wants to see America fall down under anarchy? But the dissatisfaction in the country is so great. But no foreign power has the right to come into America with money and go to those who are disaffected and pay them to use their arms against their government. That is something that the American people have to decide. And evidently, the situation in Oregon with the Bundys and the Hammonds that could degenerate into something very violent is a sign. What happened in Waco is a sign. The American people deserve a government that is truly of the people, by the people, and for the people. They don't have that kind of government as we speak. I hear Mr. Trump and other white Americans say, we must take our country back. And my question, Mr. Jones, take it back from whom?
That was my next question. You were alluding to the Federal Reserve you've been a big critic of for 40, 50 years. Can you speak specifically to the Federal Reserve? You talked about Congress taking its power to print and coin the money back. In fact, we'll play a clip here where the former Federal Reserve Chairman on Lair NewsHour says, oh, the government has no control over us. We run the government. We're above the law. No one can question us. I mean, that is such an incredible statement. I mean, that's the real rulers right there, in my view.
That arrogance says that they don't even want to hide their deceit anymore. They boldly declare, we run this. And for the American people to think that a black man in the White House has taken over this country, that is so far from the truth, because he's just the CEO of USA Inc., and they can either hire him or fire him for the job that he's doing, but he's not in control. Did you know that it was John Kennedy who recognized that there was a shadow government? And I spoke about this in my broadcast on the time and what must be done. Kennedy said, we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned. No rumor is printed. No secret is revealed. It conducts the Cold War, in short, with a wartime discipline no democracy would ever hope or wish to match. This is why John Kennedy was killed. He understood the conspiracy, and as far back as the founding fathers of this nation, they knew that there would be those who would try to take over the set up the Bank of America,
Private central bank.
a private central bank, and they were told to guard against that. And under Woodrow Wilson, in 1913, the guard left. Rockefeller met, one of the Rockefellers met on Jekyll Island with Paul Warburg and his brother, who were from the Rothschilds. They wanted to set up like the five children of Rothschild Sr., the Bank of Italy, the Bank of Austria, the Bank of France, the Bank of England, all started by the banking family. Well, who cares who the politicians are, Mr. Rothschild said, as long as they control the wealth. So they bankrolled both sides of a conflict and ended up ruling both sides. This is where we are today. But Mr. Jones, I tell you, no matter how hard the schemers plan to destroy the good that can come to the people with proper governance, they are losing and they will lose, because they have set a trap, but they're getting caught in their own trap. The American people are waking up. The masses all over the earth are beginning to rise. And that's why Zbigniew Brzezinski said, at one time, it was easier to control 1 million people than to kill 1 million people. Today, with the awakening of the masses, Zbigniew Brzezinski said, we're losing control of the masses. So it is easier today to kill 1 million people than to control. So all kinds of schemes are developing to kill mass populations. And you may have heard us say that the gentleman that was the Secretary of State under Nixon, Mr. Kissinger, developed a memo called Memo 200, in which he said that 2 billion people on this earth had to be culled, because the resources of the earth are getting shorter, the population getting more, so we got to kill billions of people. And it's going on as we speak. The radical, you call them the pharmaceutical companies. Who goes against them? Nobody. Who goes against the gun lobby? Nobody. They don't have the power to change it. It's not that the American people shouldn't have guns. That's what the Constitution declares. We as Muslims, our leader told us, no weapons, not even as much as a penknife, because in our homes, the Nation of Islam has taught hundreds of thousands of people, and in the nation, you never hear Muslim killing Muslim in an argument, because we are taught that it's the truth that settles all arguments. So we don't have a gun to reach for or a knife to reach for. We reach for our intelligence and we argue over the truth. What is the truth? And if the truth is from my wife and it condemns an action of mine, I have to bow down to the truth. I can't raise my fist and strike her because it's against our law. And this, sir, is why in the nation and in the Quran, we can't have abortions. We, and the Catholic Church was, I believe, for that, not birth control, but not abortions. When I was on the mall a few weeks ago in Washington, I talked about my mom, and I talked about the circumstances around my birth, and my mother knew that if I came to birth, I could disrupt her relationship with the man that she was with, because my father, whom she married, and he was a handsome philanderer, so she got rid of him, but he came back on the scene, and she was pregnant with me. The man, my mother's very dark, and the man that gave my mother her first child is very dark. So my brother is dark, but my father was light-skinned, curly-haired. So she was afraid that if that baby came to birth and was light-skinned, it would destroy her relationship with that man. So she decided to abort me. And she tried 3 times to abort me, and on the 3rd time, in those days, she used a hanger, and she was unsuccessful, and I came to birth. And I said that on the mall to all those people that were there and to the millions who were watching. If my mother was successful in aborting me, what would the world have lost? Jesus was born under strange circumstances, and she had to be put away privily, as the Bible teaches, because if she were seen pregnant, the law was, where's the husband? Where's the father? Well, you say Holy Ghost, but we know there's no human being born without the agency of a man. That's real. So they would have killed Mary. But her baby was the last prophet to the Jewish people, Jesus. I'm saying that to say this: every prayer that we pray is answered through the womb of a woman. If there were no Steve Jobs and his mother aborted him, we might not have had iPhones. We might not have had the tremendous advancement that we have made in science and technology. It all came from a child born from a woman, some simple woman, yet producing greatness. This womb is the workshop of God. And when you pray and I pray that our loved ones who die of cancer, some die of AIDS, some die of diabetes, some die of Alzheimer's, there is a cure for everything. And that cure is not going to drop out of the sky. It's going to come from the womb of a woman and a baby that was given a chance to live and to grow. So on that mall that day, I asked every woman that was expecting, I said, put your hand over your womb. And I prayed that what was in her womb, if they would let it grow to term, that baby would be a child that would work to build a new and better world for all of us. And that's why we are against eugenics. Mr. Muhammad was death on birth control. He called it a death plan by the government against poor people. So we find that we are kindred spirits in so many ways. And you know, Mr. Jones, I felt that today. I felt that when we met and you could question me and strip away whatever there is, if there's something to be stripped away, that America could see me as I am, white people could see me as I am, and perhaps a dialogue could begin, because the one thing that's missing in the dialogue, even with Mr. Trump, nobody's talking about the future of black people, the future of the indigenous, the Native Americans. This country, the original sin of America, is the destruction over 120 million native people. And when Master Farrakhan Muhammad came, there was only 2 million Indians left. Millions of us were brought out of Africa, not to be citizens, but to be made burden bearers of the real citizens. So our sweat and our blood made America rich so that immigrants could come over and find the American dream on our nightmare. So if Mr. Trump, and I believe he's bold enough, if he knew how much God is interested in the future of black people, not that he's not interested in the future of all people, but he's interested in the future of black people for this reason. You know, there's not a Jewish person that suffered under the Holocaust could come home to their mom or dad with a German as a boyfriend or girlfriend. Not right away. Time had to erode the pain of what the Holocaust really was. But black people, no matter what we have suffered up to this very moment, we have never been spies for any foreign government against America. We have never risen up as a force against the tyranny that has been imposed on us by our government. We have fought in every war, from the Revolutionary War all the way up to the last war that there was in the Gulf. And we have never turned against our country. We have a heart, Mr. Jones, of forgiveness, a heart that today we can love those who have done us so much evil. So God wants to use us. That kind of heart. And that's what I said on the mall. Thomas Jefferson and the early writers of the Declaration of Independence, they knew that slavery was wrong, but they had it. And Thomas Jefferson made this statement: I tremble for my country when I reflect that God is just and that his justice will not sleep forever. So we've arrived, Mr. Jones, at a time when what people have sown, all of us, we have to reap. America has sown some terrible things. And in a time of reaping, That's why I know that the present powers, they don't love the American people. They don't even love their own children, because the scripture says, prepare slaughter for the children, for the iniquities of their father, because somebody has to pay for the evil that the government is constantly pouring, not only on us and on white people and poor people, but on all the peoples of the world. So I close thanking God for you in this moment, hoping and praying that what is done with these words from you and myself will open a door that dialogue can continue, and that this may just be the first, because you got so many questions yet to ask of me, and I want part 2 to be better than part 1.
Well, I'll tell you, this has been a great interview, and I've talked about the least I ever talk, and I know you've gone for an hour and a half. I've got like 4 or 5 other questions. Is that all right?
Go ahead.
I see myself subconsciously using race, using balkanization, even when I cover it, because even though I'm a truthful person, my flesh likes it and wants to do it. And I see black people doing the same thing, and every other group, and all the folks that have come together, people that are against those that aren't obsessed with video games, or people that are against those that aren't into sports, whatever. All these divisions. How do we beat that? How do we not play down that destructive road?
First of all, we have to understand nature. God says in the Quran, I created you into tribes and families that you may know one another. Well, your tribe is not my tribe. But if I do not have enough sense to be to my tribe a person that would suffice the needs of my tribe, then I'm not being true to who I am, but I'm called on to grow. And it's in the process of growth where we have fallen down. So now I have to look out for black people. I mean, that's my love. But that's not all that there is to me, because I have grown and I love humanity now. But if I'm not true to my own people and their needs, you cannot trust me to be true to you and your needs. So the first thing Jesus said, the greatest law, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the second one is like unto that, love your neighbor as you love yourself. In America, we have never been taught to love us. We're taught that our blackness is a curse, that our broad nose, our thick lips, our kinky hair is a divine curse. And that has been believed by many, so we come up feeling inferior because the slave master made sure we didn't know how to read for 300 years. And it's the nature of the human being to know, but then to deprive us of knowledge, which is what separates man from beast. Then you lower us into the family of wild animals.
And let me just interject. I totally agree. You watch you over the years about so much you guys have done. I agree. People need to have culture, family, tribes of people. Political correctness is even going after people being proud of their culture, whether it's Japanese, Scottish, African. I mean, you can see it's a war against people. It's a war against families. It's a war against men. It's a war against women. And that's what I'm getting at is the beta test that they've used against the black community is used against everybody, and people who think they're not being targeted or think they're above it have only lied to themselves. They want to abort the black community. They want to abort the entire human family. The globalists believe they're God, believe they're going to merge with machines, believe they're going to take over, believe they have divine right to rule us. And all I'm saying is we should all maintain our groups, be proud of ourselves, take care of issues we have with other groups. I get it. But there's this big giant threat that's as bad as, like the movie Oblivion, where it's a foreign alien force come to kill everybody. I mean, the globalists consider themselves to be a new super species.
That day is over. They will not accomplish that.
That was my next question. You think they'll accomplish it?
No. I could say it emphatically, hell no. They will not do that. See, now I'm going to say something. I'm going to scripture here for a minute, and I hope those who are familiar with scripture will understand this. All of the prophets came to their people first because there was a problem among their people that God wanted them to solve or to be solved, so he intervened and raises one from among that people, speaking the language of that people to deal with the problems of that people. So you have Confucius over here, Tao over here, Zoroastrian over here, you have Buddha over here, you have Shinto over there, you have Moses, you have the Israelite prophets. But there's a seed planted in every one of these tribes that now must be watered, because if we stay in the tribal mentality, we are not in accord with the demand of the present time. The present time is warning us, cajoling us, and moving us. Be true to your tribe. But your tribe is a part of humanity. And if you stay just with a tribe, then you'll never become a nation. And so whenever I go to Africa, I preach against tribalism, because if you're going to become a nation, then the tribe submerges itself into the national identity. And that's the miracle of what America represents, because all of the Europeans that came, they came from their nation, their tribe. They came to America.
And they were always killing each other.
Exactly. And then, but the American ideal overcame to a degree the tribe. Now, the Irish suffered when they came. The Jews suffered. The Italians suffered. Those that were here before them put it on them. But as time goes on, you see the evolution take place. So an Italian can be here with a Jew, or a Gentile over here with a Jew over here. And now the Jews who were very close to each other, I mean, they married within the religion. They didn't marry outside. But now that tradition is being broken, because now there's a more growth, maturity. Jesus said it like this, or Paul said it. Listen to these words. He says, in Christ, there's no Jew, no Greek, no bond, no free, no male, no female. All become one in Christ. The whole objective that Christianity has not yet reached, that Christ had, was to break down nationalism, tribalism, this idea that men must be against women and women against men, when God made the two to complement each other. Their natures are made to embrace each other, console and comfort each other, guide and help each other to grow toward perfection. So this idea that you just articulated so beautifully, we're in the time now, we're maturing into, the globalists have a thought now. They didn't get it out of thin air. The globalists are trying to make a one world government that they're the boss of. And all the wealth of the world will be governed and controlled by them. Well, the truth is that that's what Christ wanted. That's what Muhammad wanted. No borders separating us. We're human beings. This is our earth. We came up out of the earth and we go back to the earth. When you die, you could die in China. The earth is not going to say, oh, he's not Chinese, he can't be buried here. The earth will take your body in China. It'll take mine in India. Wherever it is, we are from the earth. And so God is moving humanity toward that ideal, one humanity.
But they want to divide and conquer us and then rule us over division in an enslaved world government, not it naturally happening because we all mature and grow together and then it just happens. They want to bring in their counterfeit.
Well, here's what we see that's going to happen, Mr. Jones. The powers of this world have gotten their powers through war and deceit and treachery. Maybe the next time we meet, God willing, we'll go deeper into the spiritual aspect of tribe and why Satan has come into religion, politics, education to but foster the divisions and then pit them against each other. I got something here from President Bush. Because when 9/11 took place, he was justifiably angry, and so were the American people. And I'd just like to read what he said. When 9/11 took place, he was so angry, justifiably so. He said, we will direct every resource at our command, every means of diplomacy, every tool of intelligence, every instrument of law enforcement, every financial influence, every necessary weapon of war to the destruction and to the defeat of the global terror network. And then he talked about ripping up these terror cells. So did Colin Powell. So did others. So their anger put them on a destructive course to use all the power of American military might to, this is the cover though, to destroy all of these quote unquote terror cells. But underneath, your aim was to create war, to steal the resources of the nations. Russia is seen as a threat. So America now has put weapons in NATO. And some of some of those that were in the Soviet Empire have now become part of NATO. So Russia feels threatened. And just the other day, Russia said they see NATO as a potential threat. Now, war is coming. It's a horrible war that my teacher taught us of. And I got to say, my teacher again is the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I believe him to be a messenger of God. I believe that God raised him as a warner to America. America, you are reaping now what you have sown. You can't fight the natural disasters that are coming. And way back in the 60s, Mr. Jones, Elijah Muhammad said, America would suffer from unusual rain, unusual snow, earthquakes, unusual. Then the forces of nature, hail, sleet, snow, cold, fire. Now look at America. You just came from Texas. Something horrible happened there just a few days ago. But you can't say, who did that? Well, you can call it El Nino, my foot. That is God's judgment coming on America as it was written. Now, God has said, you have to reap now what you've sown. You've destroyed cities and towns in Europe, in Africa, in the Middle East, things that you didn't want. America destroyed them. Now look at your cities. They're underwater. Your farmland being destroyed. Fire burning the lands of California and the West. Tornadoes, hurricanes.
And it's just the beginning if we don't.
This is just the beginning. And that is what I wanted to say about whoever will be our president. If you're not dealing with that which has incurred the wrath of God, then you can't make America great again. And you can't bring America back from the abyss that she's falling into. Within the next few years, the dollar that we kill each other for will be devalued into nothing. What will people use when the dollar is gone? What will happen to the world? A war is coming, and that war will clean the slate, and whatever is left will find a way to become one with each other. We have no other alternative than either to live together in peace. So God is going to set up a government. This one is not it.
Well, obviously, I came here with the intention of doing an open, real interview, and you were on the same page, but it's gone even better than I thought. And obviously, I'm going to put this interview out pretty much in its entirety with a lot of clips that basically augment what we've discussed here today. And I know full well the media will take it out of context and say that Alex Jones endorses everything that Minister Louis Farrakhan has to say. You know, even if it was 30, 40 years ago, we all grow. But that doesn't matter, because this interview is to get people of all spectrums thinking outside the box and getting over the new tyranny that is political correctness, to not talk to each other, to be all upset and scared, and to watch what we say so that they can restrict all free speech. And I don't think anybody can disagree with the fact that this has been a very, very important interview, and that unfortunately so many of the warnings that you have raised in the past are unfolding. And I do hope that that my group, InfoWars, can talk with your organization and group and hopefully share information, because that's what I know, that just incredible, you can see it, but I can feel it, just great evil is coming, great judgment. And folks better get themselves right now with God and get past all the petty fighting and all the petty mindlessness, myself included, because we all get angry, we all, you know, who are real, shoot from the hip. But it's been a very, very informative interview, and I appreciate you giving me more than 3 hours of your time total when we first got here, Mr. Farrakhan. Minister, thank you.
Thank you. And I must say that ISIS is the bastard child of America's errant foreign policy. And none of the globalist ideas will take root. And I guarantee when this is put before the world to judge us as they will, we will find that there are more people who will agree and want to come out from behind the madness to try to make a better contribution to make a better world. Because I want you to pay close attention to the weather. You're going to see rain like you've never seen it. Snow like you've never seen it. God is going to turn the very things that you need to survive and make it your enemy. Right now in Texas, thousands of head of cattle were destroyed in this last thing. Milk gone. Famine is coming to us who have eaten well. But God is going to humble America and the so-called globalists. I laugh at you because you have laid the trap, but your foot is in your own trap. The whole world will go free, free of all tyrants, and I am with God to set down every tyrant on this earth. The people must be free to grow, to develop, to be cultivated, that the glory of God may be seen in the human being that he created.
But Minister, why are we so divided as a people? What caused us to want to go at each other and keep this division thing going?
Very good question. You know, Christ, Jesus, was one man. Christ produced a community. And as long as he was in the world, the community remained together. When Jesus was crucified, for 300 years, those who believed in Jesus had not been able to come together. But in the year 325 AD, in Rome, Italy, in the city of Nice, the Christians came together under the Nicene Creed. I believe in God the Father, yes, maker of heaven and earth and all of things, etc., etc. Well, now the church is beginning, but it's an organized church. Jesus' symbol was never a cross. The symbol of Jesus was a fish. And anywhere you saw the fish, you knew you were looking at a follower of Jesus. Why? Because when he met Peter, Peter was fishing. And he told Peter, if you come and follow me, I will make you a fisher of men. And today, the church has lost the fisherman mentality of Jesus Christ. We walk right by the prostitute, we say nothing. We walk by the drug addict, we say nothing. We walk by the gang brother or sister, and we say nothing. We walk by the drug addict and the drug dealer, the pimp and the prostitute, and we act as though we have nothing to tell them. But Jesus, that's a different story. Jesus never walked by the little man in the street. He was always found in the highways and the byways, bringing the people not only to himself, but bringing them to his Father, and through his
wonderful, reaching to them his gospel of love. He made people love him and the teachings so much that they could be put in the Colosseum in Rome and be eaten by lions, but they would never give up their faith. That's the Jesus that I know. That's the early Christian community that I know. But Satan has come into all religions, and that's why we are so divided, can't get together, can't agree on anything, and that's why the enemy is in power always, because of our religious differences, which the enemy exploits, our racial and tribal differences, which the enemy exploits, our condition of having education and not having any, having money and not having any. So anything that makes one different from the other, the enemy exploits that difference, and therefore we cannot come together in the unity that is necessary to make us a power to remove every impediment to our progress.
And when you say the enemy, Minister, who are you referring to as the enemy?
Anyone that acts in a way to facilitate division and hatred among us is our enemy. And we should never think that we've come into the world and are in this condition that we are in and don't have a real enemy. Somebody is profiting from our division, from our disunity, from our ignorance of God and self. So whoever that is, and you know who it's been, so unless the enemy changes, but you know the enemy is so wise today, he has made us enemies of ourselves. So he doesn't have to be in our community killing us. We're doing a good job. I understand that nearly 500 Belizeans died in the last 4 or 5 years. Black on black crime, violence, hatred, bloodshed. So we are now become the enemy, but we weren't not always like this. There was a time in Belize you never had to lock your door. There was a time in Belize where you could walk the street and the elderly could walk and the young could play, and there was no danger then. But today, the elderly cannot walk the street. Somebody will rob them. Somebody in an accidental shooting will shoot down the young or shoot down the elderly. So our neighborhoods have become a jungle, and the human being has become like a wild, savage beast, fulfilling what is written in the book of Revelations, that we had the mark of the beast in our forehead and in our hands. If you think like an animal, you'll act like an animal.
Right.
But if you think like Jesus Christ, you will act like Christ. And if we were true Christians, then the streets would never be the way the streets of Belize City are, and the streets of America are, and the streets of the world are. Yet we claim Christ. But as the scripture says, we draw nigh unto him with our lips, but our hearts are far removed from that great man.
Now, that brings me to a part of the scriptures that says, when Jesus was asked, Master, what is the greatest commandment of all? And his reply was, love the Lord thy God with all your heart and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. And he was asked, who is your neighbor? And then he went on to describe the parable of the Good Samaritan, showing that even your enemy is your neighbor. And because the Jews and the Samaritans were enemies, and it was the Samaritans who took care of the Jews.
If you look real
so what's the
close
lesson in that?
Now, when that wise man asked him, after he said the 2 great commandments, the first one, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the second is love your neighbor as yourself. But the smart man in the audience said, and Jesus, who is my neighbor? And Jesus didn't say your neighbor's the man next door.
No.
Jesus said a certain man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among thieves, and they robbed him of his raiment. They hit him in the head, and they left him wounded in the road. And along came a priest, and he walked by on the other side. And along came a Levite, which is the Levitical priesthood of the Jews. He looked at the man, saw him with a wound in his head, saw him robbed, and looked at him, shook his head, and kept on walking. But then Jesus said, but a good Samaritan was traveling in that same direction. He saw the man. He bound up the man's wound, poured oil in the wound, and took that man to an innkeeper and gave the innkeeper 2 pence and said, if it is more than what I've given you, I will repay you on my return. Then Jesus asked his questioner, which one of these did the neighborly thing? Your neighbor is not the man that you live next door to.
That's right.
Your neighbor is the man that will take time and try to help you out of the condition that you're in. So it's not being a good neighbor when you walk by your brother in the street that needs and you have something and you won't help him. It's not being neighborly if you call yourself a Christian like that priest and walk by on the other side and leave your people in the gutter suffering. That's not being a good neighbor. That's not being a good Samaritan. That's not being a follower of Jesus the Christ. So I'm going to ask you, audience, who is your neighbor? And what will you do to show that you and I are true followers of Jesus the Christ?
Minister, but it doesn't always include, and most important, a love for oneself. If you don't love yourself, then you cannot love your neighbor, because he says, love your neighbor as you love yourself.
But you cannot, my dear brother, love yourself if you don't know yourself.
That's the point.
And that's what the enemy did. He came. The black man in Belize, ask him, what is your name? He'll give you, very rarely, an African name. He'll give you an English name, but he's not an Englishman. He speaks the English language, but he's not an Englishman. Where is your name? Where is your language? What is your culture? What is your God? What is your religion? Where did you come from? What is your history? He can't tell you. So when you don't know yourself, you can't love yourself. So when you walk the streets of Belize today, you don't see people who love one another because they don't love themselves.
That's right.
Good.
That's where it starts, right?
Yes.
But we have to know ourselves in order to love ourselves.
Yes.
I'm always learning from you, and thank you so much for being so inspirational in what you say, and the honesty and the sincerity with which you say what you say.
Thank you.
I'm extremely happy for that. One of the shows that we do on this station is how we are governed. And I know you have a Caribbean background, and most of our Caribbean countries are governed in the same fashion, the parliamentary system and the Westminster system, which we take and set up to suit our own needs. Talk to me about how important it is that the system of governance reflect truly the will of the people.
The system of governance that it took the British hundreds and maybe 1,000 years to evolve toward.
Right.
It demands a certain maturity that you can have opposition, but your opposition is positive in that your opposition is always looking to make the country better from a party perspective. And what happens to us in the Westminster system of governance, we're not mature enough, from my vantage point, to have an opposing view and it not become personal. In America right now, partisan politics is destroying the possible good fruit of democracy. So here we are in the Caribbean. In this great country, you have two political parties, the PUP and the UDP. And if great success comes from the UDP and they are put out of governance and the PUP comes in, we don't build on the good that was done by the previous administration. This is going on throughout the Caribbean. So every time you get a new government, it's like we're starting all over again. So the country really does not make the progress that it could make. You mean to tell me if the PUP is in power, that they don't do anything of value, that the UDP should keep going if they get in power? We are hurting Belize. The system of governance is a British system. We should evolve a system of governance that reflects who we are, where we are in this time period. Have we evolved enough to understand that my opposition is not my enemy? My opposition is like what's in my body. The yin and yang is within me. The yin and yang is in a cell. The yin and yang is in an atom. This is the way God makes life moves. We have opposite poles, but they work together to create motion. But we use this system to destroy one another. And now, where is Belize today? And where could Belize be if we were more mature and didn't see our opposition as our enemy? The two parties should be working for the good of Belize, not just for your party. Your party is a part of the country. And if your party does well and you don't see that the other part or party is a part of the whole, then you're not working for the good of the whole. So my teacher, Elijah Muhammad, taught me to think for the whole and to speak for the whole. And I would humbly say to my wonderful Prime Minister Barrow and my wonderful opposition leader, Dr. Francis Fonseca, if you look at Belize, this is our country. Party, yes, but country more than party. That is like me as a Catholic saying you as a Baptist have no place in the kingdom of God. So we start fighting over our religious persuasion just like we fight over our party politics. And what's the end result? The end result is that the Christian community is not united. But if the Christian community were united in Christ, there is no impediment in the pathway of your progress that you could not overcome. But being divided and Satan playing one off against the other, then he will always have a kingdom, and yours will always be thy kingdom come, never thy kingdom is.
You know, the Lord's Prayer is often prayed, and there's a part in there that says, forgive us as we forgive those who trespass against us. Right?
Yes.
Now, to me, that's the most important lesson that we need to be teaching. Well, they're very important lessons, but that's one of the most important lessons we need to be teaching, how to forgive. Right? Could you comment on that, Minister?
Yes.
How do we go about forgiving somebody who has hurt us? Because that's part of the problem why we have, for example, the killings, where they're revenge or take back, or, you know, how do we forgive somebody who has hurt us tremendously?
Pope John Paul, probably one of the greatest popes in the last century, or even more, that the church is now lifting to possibly soon become a saint. Pope John Paul traveled in Latin America, in South America, in North America, in Africa, and the world. And like the travels of Paul, John Paul went to the indigenous people and he asked the indigenous people to forgive the church for what the church had done to destroy the culture of the indigenous people of our planet. I heard his plea, and I'm sure we are all, as human beings, anxious to say to someone who did wrong and they ask for forgiveness, we want to forgive. During the Million Man March, Brother Rene, we gave 8 points of atonement and reconciliation at the Million Man March. Now, if I want forgiveness from you for something that I've done to you, the first thing that has to happen is you have to be able to speak to me of what I did to offend you. If you speak to me, point out my wrong. When you point out my wrong, I hear it here. I have to acknowledge it here. And once I acknowledge, wow, I did Rene wrong, let me then confess my fault. See, what did you do, Pope John Paul, to the indigenous people? And will you permit us to point out to the church all the wrongs that you did to destroy the culture of the indigenous people? You must sit and listen to that and then acknowledge, yes, I did that. I acknowledge. I confess. That's the third step, confession. Fourth, I repent. See, forgiveness is just, well, I can forgive you in my heart. I go on about my business and I feel good. But did God forgive? See, his thing is a little more stringent. Forgive those who trespass against you. Well, I know that my enemies have trespassed against me, but I'm busy pointing out. That's why they don't like me, because I'm telling you what you did to ill affect my people. Now, if you don't like that, you want to shut my mouth. Farrakhan is a hater. Farrakhan is an anti-Semite. Farrakhan is anti-white. No, Farrakhan is bringing you the truth of what was done. Now, if I point it out to you, what is your responsibility? And when have you repented for the evil that you have done to the indigenous people of our planet? And then after you repent, you have to atone. Well, atonement for evil could be reparations. See, the British don't want to hear nothing about reparation. America don't want to hear anything about reparation. But black man, red man, brown man, when we worked the sugar cane, when we worked the cotton fields, when we worked the fields for our oppressor, we made England rich. We made France rich. We made Spain and Portugal rich. We made Holland rich from our labor. So don't ask us to forgive, but you won't stand up and say, we repent. And we will make atonement for the evil that we have done to you as a people. Then we can sit down at the table and you can say, well, yes, well, what was my labor worth? What was my suffering at your hands worth? And are you willing to make amends, to give us something to go on? Look at the poverty of the people whose lands you raped. Look at the wretchedness of the people whose culture you destroyed. So if you're a just person and you're sincere about asking for forgiveness, then tell us, what will you do to repent of your evil, and what will you give to atone for what you've done? Then your forgiveness is not only with us, your forgiveness is with God. Then there's reconciliation. Then there's genuine harmony, and we can embrace each other as brother. But don't you play on my sympathy as a human being and ask me to forgive you when you have done nothing to earn that forgiveness by coming back with justice for those whom you have destroyed.
And Minister, how could we apply that now to a localized situation, brother to brother, Belizean to Belizean?
That's a good question. Good, because brother to brother, we have never done to each other what the slave master and the colonial master has done to us. You're a silly brother, so you rob your brother of some money. You rape the daughter, or fornicate with his daughter, or have adultery with his wife. That's what you do. You rape, you rob, and some you kill, but none of you have done to others what the enemy has done to us all. And that's why you need somebody from God to speak to your enemy, because you don't have the courage. You don't have it in your heart. You're a weak person. And so you want to forgive, hoping that things will get better. But they only get worse because he's deceived you with soft, smooth words. But now, brother, here's what you have to do. And Jesus set the tone. Peter asked him, said, Master, how often should I forgive? And Jesus said, 70 times, 7 times.
70 times 7.
Which is an infinity of forgiveness. Well, what are you after, Jesus? That you would ask me to forgive this man 70 times, 7 times, and you've put me at the door of your kingdom to let people in or turn people down. Now you're making me a forgiving person. That's right, Peter. That's right. Because I, this is Jesus talking, have come to redeem this person who was destroyed by Satan and is doing Satan's work. He's a liar, he's a thief, he's a rapist, he's a murderer, but under all of that, he's the people of God. Yeah. So will you help Jesus to redeem this so-called lost soul? See, Brother Rene, Jesus came for the lost sheep. And that word lost, when you look at that in the dictionary or in the Roget's thesaurus, lost means irreparable, irretrievable, irreconcilable, hopeless, past praying for, literally, spiritually dead. Yet Jesus came to take that kind of human being and bring them back and reconcile them not just to man, but to God. So Peter, forgive. And I've been on this battlefield for 57 years. I've been evil spoken of by my own people. They've sought to take my life, burn my house down with my wife and my children in it. But you will never hear me not being willing to forgive you for what you've done. Because as Jesus said when he was on the cross, Father, forgive them. Why, Father? For they know not what they do. The enemy of all of us knows exactly what he's doing. He just doesn't consider the consequences of his actions, and that is why God says in the end, he will be the judge of us all, and judgment from God is something to be feared.
There's one word I wanted to comment on, Minister, and that one word is respect.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Now, some of us hurt each other with words. Some of us hurt each other by deeds. Respect comes from a Latin prefix and a Latin word. Specto, spectare, the infinitive meaning to look. To look, again. When you respect somebody, you don't look at them for what they were yesterday, you look again. For yesterday is not today. But if you hate your brother for what he did yesterday, you did not look again. Maybe your brother has changed from yesterday to today. So in respecting one another, you always give each other a chance to be better tomorrow than they are today. So one of our teachings from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he asked the question, what are you doing today for yourself? Your brother from the East wants to know and hear from you at once. So what you did yesterday is past. But what we do today is present time reality. And the good that we do today can offset the wickedness or evil that we did yesterday. Much respect.
Much respect. And the mutual respect too is very important, right?
Yes, yes.
Now, our country believes you've been here, this is your third visit here, right? Am I right with that? Or
Yes.
This is your third visit. I know I attended when you were here the last time. How, in your mind, looking at Belize, how do we go moving Belize forward, Minister? What's the way forward for us? What would be your recommendations for us to build a nation that is solid and in love with itself and with the world?
This is a country, the population of which has Garifuna, Creole, Mayan, Mestizo,
Chinese,
white,
Lebanese,
Chinese,
East Indian,
Arabs.
yeah.
All of this is a part of Belize. But the people that are the most successful are the Indian from the subcontinent of India, the Arab, the Chinese, and the whites. And there's a reason why they are more successful than the Creole, the Garifuna, and the Mayan. You see, they are alive mentally, and they know the science of business. So when they come into a country like Belize, the first thing they want to get a grip on is land. And then they want to produce the means of subsistence, food, clothing, shelter. They become the business community, and they become wealthy. And then as long as we are not united as the Chinese are, as the Arabs are, as the Indians are, as the whites are, then the Mayan is over here, the Garifuna over here, the Creole over here. We may meet together, talk together, but we don't work together for the common good of all. But when we do what we see them do and come into unity, then, pooling our resources, we can change the reality of our existence.
So the key really is in unity, working as one people, one Belizean people.
That's correct.
In one direction.
I humbly say that I would be happy if all of us could unite.